Once upon a time, in a place far, far away, somewhere in South America it's rumored, there was a little fishing village, and this is where Conquistador got his name. It was a fishing village where fish feared him, and women loved him. Loved him. And so in the next episodes, we build a lure to celebrate and commemorate the man they call Conquistador. G'day folks, Greg Budd from Bud's Baits here. Welcome to the African Lure Craftsman. Okay, back to the drawing board, guys. So we've got our sketch in front of us, we've got our tracing paper, and now what we're going to do is we're going to trace these details here. This is a very simple hack to transfer detail to a lure without having to go to the trouble of carving. I don't know if other people do it. I've never seen it done before, but it's something I came up with some years ago, and I use this technique a lot. It also, for those who might think it's some sort of cheat or something like that, yes, it is a cheat basically, but it's a very, very durable cheat, and if you follow us, you'll see what I mean when I get to actually gluing the detail onto the lures. So what we'll do is we'll just trace all that detail here. Every aspect of the gills, because what we're going to do later is we're going to transfer this to cardboard, and we're going to cut those shapes out individually. We also want the fin and the position of the fin, so without moving the paper, let's trace that as well, and basically there you have it. So what we have here is, locally we call this Matari board. It's just a porous type of craft board. You get it on the back of notepads, things like that. Why we use this is because it's porous, and we're going to need that when we glue it onto the actual lure. But first, our first step would be now transferring these details. And how I do that is I always fold it in half. Because remember, you want a double. You want a gill for each side. I'll use my little roller here to get that crease, and then what I'll do is I'll transfer my tracing right to the edge of it, right to the edge. Now, this technique I'm using leaves a lot of scope to do as much detail as you like. Sometimes I'll double the card if I need a thicker fin or I need other details. In the case of the gill here, I'm going to do a 3-leveled gill. So basically the main gill plate here will be on top of a lower gill plate, which I'm drawing around now. And then finally we'll have a small plate on top. Using a very blunt pencil so you can get thick lines, and a soft pencil, I think this is a 2B, so that the transfer will be easier to see. So we've done that lot. So now I'm going to go over it just to give us some starker lines here before we start cutting those out. And there we have it. Okay, to the cutting out stage. So any craft knife will do, various types around, and let's just cut those out. Remember, we've got it doubled, so we've got to keep this very firm. This is going to be the last area we cut out here now, so we can keep the card together, and we just cut out those shapes. Might need to go over it a few times to get through both layers. So we cut through there, we're through one side at least. Can remove that bit. Let's just continue to cut through this so we can get the exact opposite. Okay, so we've got our fins cut out, which are over here, and we've got our our gill plate cut out. This is the under gill plate. So we've got to do a few more cuts now, and we're going to use the same tracing to just trace each level of the gill plate onto the card, and we're going to cut those out individually. While I'm finishing up here, cutting the different levels of the gill and the detail, the fins, I've got my helper here, Mac. Mac is a local Zimbabwean. Say hi, Mac. Hi. Mac is from Victoria Falls, and he has been with me for several years here, and he's trained in all aspects of the building of lures, lure carving. So he's going to be just getting that final rough cut shape for me, and then we're going to take over from him with the sanding, just to speed things up. We've got all our pieces of cardboard cut out now, and we've got exact opposites for each side of the lure, so we can place gills and fins on the left and the right of the lure. What I'm going to try to achieve, I'll just reach over here, is this sort of effect. Now, for the naysayers, this is actually probably a stronger form of detailing than even carving. What we do, and you'll see me do it just now, is we apply these while impregnating the porous board with super glue. It goes through the cardboard, it sticks to the wood, and you cannot even really penetrate this at all, or even pry it off. I mean, it's a very good way of achieving that detail. That's a sample of another lure there. You can see the different layers, and that's what we're trying to achieve here. The end result being that sort of effect there. Okay, so we've got all our little pre-cut cardboard gills and fins, and what we want to do now is we want to now place them on the lure. I'll do this normally before I cut the belly slot for the wire, and that way you can play around if it's slightly off center or one side doesn't match up, it was higher than the other side. You can reshape the back of the lure or reshape the lure slightly to get it looking even. If you slot it and then you place your cardboard bits and you don't line it up, it's much harder to do so. Anyway, so before we do that, we've got to find out exactly where they'll go. And one way of doing it is tracing that again, tracing it onto the wood. For the purposes of this, I'm just going to draw in the mouth detail as we see on the picture, and then draw in the eye. That'll give me a good locating position for the gills. I could be a little bit bigger, I think. So let's take it back rather than forward. I'm aiming for about a 10 or 12 millimeter eye in here. When we come down to the actual cutting the eye socket, we'll decide on that factor. So I think that's perfect. Now what we would do is we would grab the first piece of cardboard and we'd place it where we'd want. Sorry, this can be a little bit tricky sometimes. So basically the bottom of the gill in line with the bottom of the mouth, and the top of the gill in line with the top of the eye. So that's about there. Very simple. Super glue, and just rub it in with the bottom of the bottle. Very simple. Bend it down. You might need to apply a little bit of pressure for a little time. Make sure that the cardboard is fully impregnated with the glue. And there we have it. That's our first detail on the lure. From the drawing, as you'll see, there's the 3 different plates or gill plates here, and in different levels. So I've put the largest one obviously on the bottom. The next will be the middle gill plate, which will go on top of there, and then finally the small plate will go on top of there, which we'll go through the process now as well. But first I just need to sand this one down, get any excess glue off, but I can guarantee you that'll never move off that lure now. Okay, so 220 grit sandpaper. We want to sand off the excess glue now on the surface of that plate, of that gill plate, and if there's any excess around the edges, we can use either a bit of sandpaper or possibly much easier, a file, to just get rid of those bits of glue. A file is a good idea because it gives you a nice flat edge, and you can keep the file flat on the lure to work around that gill plate. What I like doing though, so with this dust, the excess dust, is I'll often push it to areas I need to fill and then put another drop of super glue. That'll normally be on the inner of the gill plate, so you give a little bit of a raised, not an abrupt step, you get a raised edge on that side. I'll get to that now. Let me just neaten this up. Okay, so we've sanded that down. It's not 100% flat, but as you can see, there's excess dust here. I'm going to scrape it into that corner, and I'm just going to add a little, tilt it up, add a little bit of super glue, and let that work around there. And that kind of bevels that edge a little bit. Take your excess off. Shouldn't be using my finger, but I will in this case. Nothing else at hand. And don't worry, super glue does peel off. Not the best thing for you all the time, but... And there we have that first level ready and quite sharp. So now we need our next layer. Simple process, a repeat of the same. Just going to turn that again, line up the points and the leading edge by the eye. Make sure they're aligned, top, bottom, and then same process. Glue, and then just work that glue, work it in. You might get little excess bits. They can all be sanded off later. Okay, so we've done the second one. We've sanded it flat again. Very quick, very easy. We get the third level, and again repeat process. Very simple, very easy. Push down, glued already. This side, push down, glued, and we have 3 levels of gill there, one slightly overlapping, and it's starting to look quite effective. All we have to do now is, using our files and our sandpaper, is start shaping it. Very easy process again, and that is what I will do right now. So we're going to just round off the edges on everything. That's done. Tighten up anything, or all the leading edges of the actual gill plate, so there's no excess glue. Going to work the sandpaper into this edge here, which has become a little bit high. Get it a bit lower. The front of the gill here, which would lead into the mouth, I'm also going to lower as well. I can use the file here, remembering the cardboard is fully impregnated, so it actually sands like a piece of very hard wood. Okay, so the next is the fin. So I'm going to put that in position, pretty much where the drawing is. Small gap between the back of the gill plate and the fin, and we will glue that in place. Super glue on top. Let's shift it a bit there. Let's move it a little bit, and then just press down. As long as you get one edge sealed, you're fine, and then you can move on to another side of it, or the front of it where your finger is. Okay, that's done. Put a drop in there. The cardboard bends as soon as it's saturated with super glue. It likes to bend around the wood very easily, so it's not a problem. You just carry on rubbing it with the bottom of the bottle. As I say, that's what I use. You could use anything though. Just easier because this is in hand all the time. And there we have it, and the fin's done. The tricky bit about this is now getting your gills and your fin on exactly the right places, or exactly opposite, and that can be a little tricky. What I like to do, and it does constantly slip, I do use sticky stuff occasionally just to keep it in place, which is a very good idea. I'm just going to use my fingers here, because I'll draw a line from the tip of that straight across the lure, and then I'll do the same with that side, which I've already done. So basically what it means is I have to line up those 2 points on those lines, and you should have it in exactly the same place. Also remembering, take a squiz from the front, because it's got to be on the same level from the front. And that looks about right. There, down a bit. Once you have that in position, be sure to get it stuck on pretty quickly, even if it's 1/4, just so you don't lose that position. And that should do it. So at least we now have that position. We can leave that, and we can hold the bottom, and we are absolutely spot on from all angles. Perfect. So now same applies. Saturate the cardboard, bottom of the bottle, work the bottle over it, and we're done. Very simple process. The thin viscosity super glue just loves to sink in there. I mean, the cardboard actually drinks it up, goes straight through to the base, and that'll never come off. Thanks guys, I hope you enjoyed what you've seen so far. We've taken you through the build of the lure, the sealing, all the processes that have taken us to the gill detail and relief. In the next video, what we'll be doing is cutting the slot for the wire, perhaps the wire bending, and we'll discuss the weight setting as well. Stay tuned.